Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Marsha Bradfield, and I lead MA Intercultural Practices at Central St. Martin's, University of the Arts, London. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about REBEL. What is REBEL? Well, there are many ways to describe this. We can talk about REBEL as a toolkit. We can talk about REBEL as a framework. At its core, REBEL is composed of 108 cards. Here you can see someone shuffling through the hard copy version of the cards. Each of the cards features a prompt to support us in reflecting on our knowledge acquisition, to reflect on what we know. Now, this is something we can do as individuals, but REBEL is custom created to support cooperative learning so that we can recognize what we know as individuals, but also recognize what others know and what we know as groups. So this question of how do we as people evaluate our learning is a burning one, not only for educators, but also for students. So this is why REBEL was created. Many of you will be familiar with a scheme like this one. It's what we use at the University of the Arts, London, to evaluate the work of our students. Level 7 is at the master's level. It's what we use on my course, MA Intercultural Practices. You will be familiar with schemes that start with A, where this is excellent, and it's because the student has demonstrated excellent evidence that they've been awarded this grade. B is for very good evidence. C, good evidence. D, satisfactory evidence. E, insufficient evidence. And F, little or no evidence. Now, this is fine, and it works very effectively in formal contexts, like universities. But how do we get beyond student head? Now, when we are doing our BA, our MA, even our PhD, it may be appropriate for us to be dwelling in this space, appreciating the expectations of our institutions. But what happens afterwards? Well, REBEL helps to prepare our students for life after college and university as a personal approach to reflective learning. So students are encouraged to think back, to critically evaluate their lived experience and what they have gained from this. This is where reflective learning really comes to the fore. REBEL stands for Recognizing Experience-Based Education and Learning. Recognizing experience-based education and learning. It's so fascinating to think about all the contexts where we can learn. If you look at the center of this diagram, you'll see that formal learning is at the heart, and this is very familiar, again, in institutional contexts like universities and colleges. So students are formally assessed. They attend lectures, tutorials, they receive qualifications. Their experience is shaped by university policy and regulation. There's a curriculum and learning outcomes. This is composed of a variety of different inputs that come together as credits. This is what students are awarded. Around that, we have informal learning. So this is on the edge of formal learning. We can think about, for instance, student exchanges. This goes beyond the curricula of most universities. These are extracurricular opportunities. They're absolutely invaluable, but they also have a special place in each student's learning journey. Now, beyond informal learning, there is non-formal learning. We can think, for instance, about peer-to-peer learning. This is what happens in the canteen or the cafeteria over lunch between classes. We can think about non-formal learning happening on social networking sites as students are communicating with each other after hours. This is also very important to our learning journey, to our experience of formal learning. It's often some of the most important, richest learning that we acquire, but it's also not formally assessed. That's very special. It's very important, but it can also be quite confusing. And that's because in reality, life looks a lot like this. It's not a neatly organized diagram like the one that we just saw. So how do we get to grips with our messy reality? Well, REBEL can help. Now, what you're looking at here, is the hard copy version of REBEL. But what I want us to turn to now is the digital version of Level. I should let you know that this is very much at the beta stage or beta stage. So it's still being developed, but it's so helpful as a point of departure, especially for those who don't have access to the hard copy cards. You'll see there are various ways into the website, rebel-tool.org, I should say, rebel-tool.org. I would encourage you to begin by watching this short video. It's less than a minute long, and it provides an excellent overview of what REBEL is about. Then go to Explore REBEL. So you're going to click on this button up here, and then you have several options. You will see here that REBEL is mapped out across these three categories: ways of being, ways of thinking, and ways of practicing. And you'll also see that these categories are associated with different icons. So ways of being is often associated with heart work. We can think about life-wide attitudes and life-wide behaviors as being the crystallization of heart work in the REBEL scheme. Ways of thinking is head work, and here it's represented by the light bulb. So these are interests and curiosity, interests and application. So here there's an onus on head work. And finally, we have handwork. These are ways of practicing. They're very practical, and they include production experience and design experience. So you can explore these various options. I want us now to click on the pre-selected packs. And that's because these give us a really good way of approaching REBEL that's not overwhelming, because it breaks the 108 cards into groupings that align with these various themes. Now, as I teach on MA Intercultural Practices, I want to draw your attention to the intercultural cooperation option that appears in the bottom right-hand corner of the PACS page. If you click on this here, you will see that it brings you to this page here. And these are transcultural and collaborative practices that align with UNESCO's intercultural competencies. These are integral to MA Intercultural Practices, my course, the one I lead at Central St. Martin's, part of the University of the Arts London. This is part of our curriculum. But these skills are also life-wide and lifelong. And what I mean by that is that they are life-wide because we use them in all different areas of our existence. We need to be listening carefully. We need to be thinking critically all the time, and so on and so forth. They're lifelong because they're things that we will acquire, develop, deepen over the course of our existence. Now, we know that we are required to evolve our knowledge as we move through life in response to circumstances. Although these are skills that we use on a daily basis, it can be so helpful to spend time prioritizing them, choosing specific ones to keep top of mind and develop a deeper embodied appreciation for. Listening is an absolutely invaluable skill. And if we explore listening here, we click on this button, and here we have all of the REBEL cards across the various competencies that come together as a set that mix these various streams. So here we've got interests and curiosity, and you'll remember that interests relate to head work. Here's another interest and application, more head work. Here we have heart work, life-wide behaviors. And over here we have hand work, design experiences. So we have these different cards, and you are prompted, as you will see here, to select 6 cards. Now, we're always encouraging our students to go from 108, which is very unwieldy. No one can focus on all of those at the same time, to 6 cards. We might choose 6 cards because they identify particular skills that we appreciate we've recently gained through, for instance, a project that we've completed for our coursework. Alternatively, we might identify 6 cards because these are skills that we want to prioritize going forward in a particular project. The point is to spend some time thinking about what would be most useful to you at any given time. Would it be observation, in which case go ahead and click on that, inclusivity, diplomacy, negotiation? You may think, negotiation, that can mean so many things in so many contexts. Well, if you click on the card, you'll see it flips over, and here the emphasis is on advocacy. So you might think, negotiation is advocacy. That wasn't exactly what I had in mind. So maybe that's not the right card for me to be selecting right now. What about ethics? Let's flip that over. Ethics and criticality. That's interesting. How is ethics being defined here? Well, you'll see on the card it says compromise and adaptability in response to wider considerations and beliefs. Oh, you think, yeah, that's great. I could definitely prioritize that. So click on that card. What about inclusivity? openness. Yes, that resonates with me. Activity engaging with other cultural experiences and perspectives. Yes, that is perfect for an upcoming trip that I'll be engaged in. Yes, I want to prioritize that. So now I have 2, 4, 5 cards. I need one more. Well, what about observation? Observation looks good. Research practice. Yes, observation here means learning from the example of other and earlier precedents. Learning from the example of others and earlier precedents. That is great. Yes, I will choose that. So now that I have 6 cards, I'm prompted to select confirm. So I will do that. And it's loading. And now I've got this summary. I've got this collection. Now I can choose to click on copy the link. And that could be helpful. It means that when I put that into the browser, it's going to bring me back to this configuration. At the moment, it's not so easy to get a certificate. That's coming, though. Personally, I find it very helpful simply to take a screen grab. I like to do this with the date and the time, and then I can insert it into other documents. For instance, my blog. All my students on MA Intercultural Practices are encouraged to keep a blog that tracks their learning, where they can critically reflect on the knowledge that they're acquiring in the course, around the course, beyond the course, in keeping with these different spheres of formal education, informal education, and non-formal education that we saw earlier. So that's one way that you can use this, extremely helpful. And what you will find is that if you go back and you look at the pre-selected pack for intercultural cooperation on another day, and you go back to listening again, and look at all these fantastic options: listening, critical thinking, observing, analysis, openness, curiosity, discovery, respect, identity, belief, self-awareness, values, nonverbal behaviors, dialogue, literacy, language. All of these are amazing. But if you go back to listening again, you'll be astonished that on a different day for a different project, it will make sense to select different cards. If you are working with other people, you'll find that this is true as well. There are so many possibilities. What I wanted to highlight here is that rebel-tool.org offers an alternative to the paper-based system that has limited availability. Now, this is currently in English, but of course you can use translation tools to help. And we're in the process of translating the paper cards into more languages. And there are so many ways that you can mobilize the cards. Moments ago, I talked about creating a snapshot of the cards using the screen grab that many of you will have access to when you're working online. I encourage my students and others using the paper-based system to create photos of their cards. And again, because these are excellent to remind us of what emerged from a particular shuffle on a particular day in response to a particular project or situation. Here's another way we can use these cards. This is a variation of the coaching exercise that many of you will be familiar with, the Wheel of Life. Here it's being turned into Life Pizza, and I must credit my dear collaborator, Carrie Jeffress, for these fantastic images, these slides, this picture here of Life Pizza. She has taken the familiar exercise of the wheel of life, often used in coaching, and made it that much yummier by calling it Life Pizza. And then you can think about associating different cards with different pieces of the pizza. So this gives you a sense of the enormous flexibility of the REBEL toolkit, as well as how it can be applied with other frameworks, approaches. It can help to supplement. Additionally, you will see here as we scroll through that you can use it to plan experiences, reflect on experiences, evaluate experiences. So this idea of using it to think about the past, the present, and the future just begins to familiarize you with what a remarkable resource REBEL is. So I hope this has encouraged you to go to rebel-tool.org to play with this beta version, and get to know how REBEL can enhance your experience-based learning. Thank you so much for being with me today. And to just remind you that if you would like to be in touch, you've got any questions about REBEL, or you'd like to learn more about my course, MA Intercultural Practices at Central St. Martin's, please email me at marsha.bradfield@arts.ac.uk.